Welcome back to Gene and Roger Talk Movies. We're joined once again for the third time with director Scott Eggleston. You may remember his appearance on our show primarily from Bad Bones. He's the director of Bad Bones. Watch that movie and then listen to episode 14 where we dissect that thing thoroughly.
Yes, yes.
But today, and actually Scott texted us out of the blue, hey, have you guys done Smile? And luckily we hadn't because he wants to do it. So he's here to talk about that. Gene, initial thoughts on Smile?
Yeah, I like this movie. It pays homage to a lot of like if you've seen lots, if you're a person who watches a lot of movies, you've really kind of seen this movie before. But having said that, is this movie worthwhile? Oh yeah, I would say so. Watching this movie, it reminded me a lot of like the movie called It Follows, and also a little bit of The Ring. Mm-hmm. So definitely, it's similar to other movies.
Yeah, Final Destination thrown in there a little bit too.
Yeah. It's interesting. The protagonist in real life, her name is Sosie Bacon, which is the daughter of Kevin Bacon. So it's kind of a little thing. And there's this one other character, Rob Morgan. He was a policeman in Stranger Things. So it's kind of cool to see him because I love Stranger Things. My kids love that show. And I just got to say, just got to throw it out there. It's just the power, the money-making power of horror movies. That's why they'll be continually made. Mm-hmm. It cost $17 million to make this movie, and it grossed worldwide $217 million. I mean, there's return on investment that's just out of this world. Yep. So it's just, so.
I wish that was true of all horror movies.
Yeah. Can you imagine Bad Bones? Yeah, it cost me $10,000, and then it made $100 million.
Well, but I think a lot of it too, Scott, like with Bad Bones, and I don't want to spend the whole episode talking about that, but Bad Bones, the biggest issue with that is you don't have a giant studio behind it promoting it and all of that. The quality of that film is on par with any of these movies we've reviewed.
Well, thank you.
And it's just a matter of being discovered, right, is the thing. And I think some studio wants to come in and throw a couple million behind that movie to promote it. Yeah, you're going to see
you'll see better numbers.
Yeah, definitely. But Scott, where are you at with Smile?
For me, this movie was a near miss. I appreciated it for the things that did work, but there were some things I felt didn't work. But it's funny, when you use the word homage, you can also use the word ripoff.
I was trying to be nice.
In the same way. Because clearly I was inspired by The Ring, and It Follows also. I got the same vibe. Truth or Dare. Throw that in there with the whole Smile thing. Even though this is clearly a superior movie. But I really liked Sosie Bacon. I mean, she's the anchor to this movie. And you have to have a protagonist like that. You have to have a performance like that for a movie like this to latch onto you, right? For you to care. And her performance kind of reminded me of like Toni Collette in Hereditary, or Essie Davis, I think, in the Babadook. Just a really like super emotional, just fantastic movie performance. Yeah. And I remember I saw an interview with her about this movie, and she said how emotionally draining working on a movie like this is. As I'm sure, I know Toni Collette said a similar thing about working on Hereditary, was that it's just, she read this. She didn't want to do like another horror movie or another super dramatic movie, but for that movie, she said the script was so good that she couldn't turn it down. But that those actors are committed, and you can clearly see it, and it's very effective. And it's funny you mentioned, like, I didn't know who she was. I guess she has done other things, but I thought, man, she sure looks a lot like Kira Sedgwick. I was like, well, she's really I got a Kira Sedgwick vibe, and
that's the mom.
I didn't think of her name. Obviously, gives it away, right? That she's Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick's daughter. But she was great. And the movie definitely has atmosphere. I think when I talked about my movie, I said that a good movie, whatever genre, has to cast a spell, and this movie definitely has that. So I appreciated it for that. An interesting thing about this movie, I thought, was that I'm not a huge fan of jump scares because I feel like they drain the tension out of the movie, and so the more jump scares you pump in there, the less tension there is.
Right.
And this movie definitely had jump scares.
Yeah, the alternate title for this would be Jump Scares the movie, right?
But if I could jump off that, I think this movie did those. It wasn't populated with jump scares, but I think they use them wisely.
Well, it's interesting because I thought that this movie is a great example of how to do effective jump scares and how not to do effective jump scares.
Right.
Yep.
Because, sometimes, like, my least favorite jump scare is when they just do a smash cut to something else that looks scary and with a loud audio stinger.
Right.
Because that's not organic to the scene, right? Versus other times where something like emerges from the background or enters the frame in the same shot. Those are effective jump scares, in my opinion. Like in this movie, there's a great one that's completely blown in the trailer where the character walks out the car window. I mean, that's a great jump scare because you don't expect it. You think something else is going to happen, right? And then there's all
because you're at that scene, you're expecting that's the sister,
right.
So you're expecting something of the sister,
right?
But not that.
I mean, she's possessed or something, right? Because she's walking weird and she's out of focus. You can't see her, but what happens next is completely unexpected and great. It is a great jump scare. And then the other ones are just like a lot of, like I said, cutting away to stuff that it's just cheap. Those are cheap jump scares.
Well, and I agree with that, but I do give this movie a pass because at its core, the movie is really about generational trauma, right? And I like how it does use jump scares because Gene and I both work with people that have experienced trauma, and the slightest thing can cause some of that trauma to rush back to your mindset and really shut you down. And so I think some of those jump scares were kind of playing off that where, oh, you just see this thing or you think you see this thing and now you're back in that trauma state. And so, yeah, there's way too many jump scares in this movie as far as I'm concerned, but I do think they are done better than you open a cabinet door and there's a cat in there.
There were no cats.
Right.
Well, there was a cat.
Right, yeah, and that's the other thing we'll have to talk about is the cat. But with that whole idea of the trauma, inflicting all of these characters, I thought was really well done.
Yeah, I thought it was well. It seems like the theme of I always like to talk about movies as to their theme, and it seems like the demonic characters are actually revealed later in the movie, and one of his big lines is "You can't escape your mind," but it makes me think that, and it seems like this demonic character who possesses his victims, he seems to prey off of something that's happened in their minds or some past event in his victims. So it made me think, is there something in each of our pasts that we want to escape from? And do we have such extreme regret about maybe a particular event, something maybe we didn't do or something we did do? So then that creature preys on that weakness that we have. And it exacerbates it. And certainly in this movie, she had the protagonist, the Sosie Bacon. But I don't even remember her real name.
Rose in the movie?
Yeah, it was Rose.
Rose, yeah, Rose. Yeah, she had regret about her mother. There was an incident where the mother was had taken a large dose of drugs, and the mother had asked Rose to help her out. But then Rose didn't.
Right, Rose, who was 8 or 9 or 10 or
just
something.
A kid,
right? So
but you're aware. You how to dial 911. You didn't do it.
Right, but I think that there was setting up that generational trauma, right, where this kid that's been going on since that kid was born, right?
Right, but I think I'm getting at this. There's a one event, and that the demonic character will capitalize on that one event because it's a weakness you have in your mind.
Yeah, she was questioning. I didn't save my mother, right? I didn't do what I needed to do to save my mother, but there was all of that built-up trauma there as well from what was going through there. And as you learn about other characters that have fallen to this monster, they all had some sort of trauma that they had witnessed or whatever. And so, but Scott, let's talk about that cat because once again, right?
Mustache.
This is a movie where early on it goes out of its way to show a nice close-up of the cat and she really likes her cat and all that. The first time you saw those, what did you think was going to happen to that cat?
I don't know. I mean, I will say the payoff with the cat is pretty good.
It's awesome, yes.
The best sick joke in the movie has to do with the cat. I don't know because it seems like a trend of current more modern horror movies is that if a pet appears, it's going to die.
Yeah.
Right. That used to be taboo. Right. You used to be able to kill animals. because usually people are more sympathetic or empathetic toward
Right.
animals versus people.
It
right?
bothered me.
Yeah. I mean, Jaws did it, right? They get rid of the dog in Jaws.
Well, but it's a dog. We're talking cats here, Scott.
Cats are better than dogs. The dog cat argument. But yeah, but at least the cat didn't jump out of a cabinet, like you said. But what does happen? I mean, once the kid started opening the present, you knew it was coming.
You knew, yeah.
But that was pretty clever way to. I mean, that was a pretty again trauma introduced to everybody at that party, right?
Yeah. It ended the happiness of the party.
Yes.
Right, which also kind of shows how that sister of hers would have then become kind of under the influence of that entity when there's the jump scare there later. Here's this traumatic event, right? You had this nice birthday party for your son, and now there's a dead cat in the box instead of a train set.
Yeah.
But
that's your present.
And I'm going to do a callback to when we did Prey. I don't remember what episode that was, but that was one that showed the dog and was all about the dog. And of course, I immediately assumed that dog was going to get killed, and I applauded the director for thank you for not killing the dog. It's still alive, right?
The movie,
because you never, if they go out of their way to show the cat or the dog or the parakeet or the fish or whatever, that thing's going to die. So.
Yeah. Although this was pretty tasteful because you didn't really see anything.
No.
I mean, calling back again to like a movie like The Babadook, that dog really dies at the hands of the protagonist.
Yeah.
And it's pretty startling.
Right, but I think one of the things, too, is who killed that cat in the first place? Was it the entity? Was it her?
It was Rose. It had to be Rose.
Yeah, but they don't really explain that. And so it's kind of, I was like going, what happened there? Because can this entity just straight up kill you? Or, because what's the cat? What's the trauma with the cat, right? There's no trauma.
Yeah, it seems like the movie presents that the entity comes and goes within you. Mm-hmm. Like when the entity is possessing you, that's when you have the smile on your face. Mm-hmm. And so that entity can go to different people to affect the protagonist or whoever's quote unquote infected.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and
it's like an off and on thing.
The other thing I liked about the use of the smile, again going back to the trauma and kind of mental health, because Rose actually goes to a therapist at one point in this film, and it's clearly set up that she has met with this person multiple times before. Is the whole mental health aspect, because again, how many people are struggling with mental health, but they have to put that smile on their face because that's what the world expects, not really sharing what's really going on with them. And so I did like that smile was prominent there and part of the way the demon was working their magic. What did you think about that, or did you notice anything about that?
Just the smiling of the characters, like how well that came off?
Right, and then they would kill themselves.
Oh,
usually,
yeah.
Right?
Well, first of all, it was nice that it was actually the actors. It wasn't like their faces weren't manipulated any other way except for the expression the actual actor gave, which was very effective, way more effective, I think, than any sort of CGI trickery or anything. Just more chilling. But that was especially when, like with the therapist, the one scene where she gets the phone call, and the therapist is on the phone. That's stuff like that was really good. I mean, that's way more terrifying than any kind of jump cutting, or even a jump scare. That's stuff like that is more chilling because it's again organically generated from the scene, and it's not like you don't feel like you're being overly manipulated versus like an editing trick or.
Yeah, and I think that's why this movie did so well at the box office and is well respected. Is it's similar to like the movies we've talked about, The Ring and Final Destination, and It Follows, but it does a lot of smart things. That sequence with that therapist who actually turns out to be possessed by the entity, and then that phone call comes through and it is the therapist on there. That's straight up awesome horror 101 right there. So, Gene, what else was going on with you?
I don't know. There were some things that there was a lot of like when the entity, for the lack of a better phrase, possessed the person, is like they had these visions. And there was one particular sequence where she goes to the hospital room and there's like a patient, and then she has a knife, and then she stabs this guy, and over again, and then all of a sudden it just ends. I felt a little kind of manipulated there by the movie producers, directors. It's like they would take me down a path, and this path would just be like a dream. So it never really happened. It just seemed like it was like unfair to the viewers that they would take us down this path, and they did this over and over again. So it was like maybe I'm on purpose. They wanted us to, and maybe they wanted us to maybe feel what the characters felt, like they were losing track of what's real and what's not real. Maybe that's their method for that. But I felt a little manipulated.
Well, that's what they wanted you to think, but I agree that it got tiresome.
It did,
Because one trope in a horror movie is that it's just a dream, right? There's some sequence but it's a nightmare. They wake up. How many times have we seen that? And this is just a variation on that, really. And they do it a lot. And
I got a little tired of
There's a quote Roger Ebert once said that.
Quote Roger Ebert.
Yes, Roger Ebert once said that if you're standing on a rug and it keeps getting pulled out from under you, you stop standing on the rug.
Right. Great.
Because you kind of disconnect from the movie. That if you're going to pull that kind of stuff over and over and over, that you as a viewer kind of get tired of it and become less involved.
Well, I think I'm kind of giving that a pass too, because the ending sequence where she believes she has defeated the entity and escapes and then goes back to that former boyfriend's place. To me, this was the entity taking more and more control of you and feeding more and more off the trauma that is within that person, and then taking it to this crescendo where, you think you're safe, and now I'm pulling you back out to where you're not safe, which then raises that trauma level, which allows that entity to be even more powerful. I thought the ending sequence there was great, and then that alleviated some of the concerns I had about some of these other ones because they set it up where she, in order to break the curse, the chain, you actually have to just straight up kill someone. And then it sets up this thing like Gene was saying where, she's going to go to the hospital and then she starts stabbing this guy and nope, that's really not happening. She's still in the car contemplating whether or not to do it. But I think with the ending, that kind of tied all the rest of that in where this entity is just straight up playing with her. And so I'm giving that one a pass.
Although wouldn't you agree that ending was predictable? Like you knew how it was going to end up, where you thought, she thinks she's safe, but the boyfriend's going to find her somehow, and that's going to be because she goes to be alone because she figures out, if I'm alone, the entity has nobody
to pass it on.
Which is a great plan, right? But where does she go? She goes back to her house that she grew up in where the trauma started. Which when I saw that, I was like, wait a minute. Why would you go to the creepiest possible place? I realized she's trying to confront her demons.
Which was full of this long, creepy hallway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
the whole house
horror
is
trope,
dilapidated and beat up, and she's by herself, so it's worse. But why not go out into the woods or something?
Right. I actually thought about that. Why don't you just go to a big empty field, walk out into the woods just by yourself. No one's going to find you. The most remote place you can find.
I mean, a compelling question they don't really address, but they sort of bring up is that if you knew that, like you had to be alone, could you do that? Could you really isolate yourself for the rest of your life to avoid this monster? Which would be impossible, I think. Right. Eventually you're going to run into somebody, and then the demon's going to zap into them, and you're going to have the confrontation. But that was an interesting idea.
Well, and I did like it too, because again, it goes up with the idea of the generational trauma. If you can stop the trauma, it no longer can be passed on to, the rest of the family or whatever.
Sure.
So that mother that does not use drugs and be just out of control and abuse her children, if that doesn't happen, there isn't this trauma, this PTSD going on that would allow this entity to live. And so, she's going back there to confront all that, but...
And she also had time pressure. This movie seems like The Ring. There was a time pressure.
Right.
So I got the feeling that she only had about a week, and so she was coming to the end of her week, and so she knew that she had to be alone. And so she went to this maybe familiar place.
Yeah,
maybe the creature, something happens at a week.
Yeah,
like something has to happen.
Well, we saw what happened at the end of the week, but the only real problem I have with the ending is the actual, here is the creature, you can now see it. What did you guys think of that monster, the look of it and stuff at the end?
I don't know if you caught that, but I just gave a big sigh.
Well, was it what the monster looked like, or was it just a variation on her mom? I mean, I wasn't sure if it was like that's what it actually looked like. Or are you talking about when it opened its face?
Well,
when it appeared like it was in the bedroom, and then it seemed to change to its natural state
because it got bigger. I mean, which of course could have just been the trauma's bigger You know,
Yeah, it just for me, I a little bit lost it here with this movie right there because I just wondering because the deformation of the human form with the smile that's pretty creepy, you know. So I was kind of hoping they would just continue with that, but then at the end they show the creature probably in its natural state. And it made me think, oh, this creature looks like Marilyn Manson.
right.
It's like, I'm done. Just forget it. It's just, you've gone too far. You should just kept with what was good, kept with what was going. But then they decided to turn it into something like, oh, this is creepy, scary looking. No, it isn't scary at all.
Like an 8-foot tall Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, an 8-foot tall man. It's like,
With a lot of teeth. Right?
yeah, lots of teeth. Yeah, and it opens up his face. But yeah, I kind of lost a little bit. I thought maybe there was just maybe too much thinking in the movie. They had something good going, and sometimes you just try to do too much.
Left in the shadows is better than brought out. What did you
Right.
think of that creature at the end?
Well, like I said, I didn't really know what it was. If it was just like again, her mom was in there somehow. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Whatever you come up with in your mind throughout the movie is way worse than
Right.
anything they're ever going to show you. And this
Right.
is a good example of maybe that it was like. I mean, I don't think I was as adverse to the way it looked as you were, but
Yeah, it made me think of Marilyn Manson. I'm just,
Yeah.
I don't like that guy.
Oh, I mean, and then it was kind of weird when it enters Rose, right? How that
Yeah.
shot there looked really like not well done.
No, it
Yeah.
didn't.
I don't know what they were thinking, or it almost looked like there's a mannequin, and I don't know. It was
Yeah,
I'm with you.
they were losing the effects budget at the end of the film, apparently.
something. Yeah, I don't know. But my biggest complaint about the ending was number one. As we talked about, I saw it coming because I got a little. Once the movie started playing heavily on this isn't real, this isn't real, this isn't real. I sort of stepped back and became less involved. But
Right.
I was a little upset that. I realize it's a huge spoiler, right? This is a spoiler-free podcast.
No, Gene and Roger Talk Movies is all about spoilers.
Spoiler-filled
Yeah,
podcast,
we're talking
I
about
should
the
say.
movie.
We don't play
Is that her death when she succumbs was like, I hate that about, horror movies do it a lot, and I realize it's horrifying when the character you care about dies. However, I'm a big believer that characters like that have earned the right to live,
I agree. I was going to bring up the same point. Is I'm all about horror movies ending horribly. This one, I think the movie would have been better had she won.
Or at least survived. I mean, like a good horror. Well, like I'll bring up the Babadook. Okay, that's a great ending. It's you don't see that coming, and that character earned the right to live. However, there's still something attached to that. I mean,
Right.
so that's still an interesting way of spinning it. But this, it's clearly she doesn't survive.
Nope.
She
She
doesn't.
dies and transfers to the boyfriend,
Right.
which
Ex-boyfriend.
ex-boyfriend.
Yeah,
right?
and I think with this one, though, because there's such a heavy emphasis on trauma and how it affects you, it would have been nice to see that, you can overcome this childhood trauma, this PTSD event
Right,
that
and-
occurred, and this movie
The
just
movie
is like, nope.
alluded to that, though, that this thing could be defeated because remember one of the other victims, I think the wife of one of the other victims did all this research and she found a chain because like you get infected and then you die in front of somebody else and then you pass the smile onto somebody else. It's like a chain. So she said there was a chain in Brazil,
Oh, right,
and she
right.
she alluded to that maybe it existed for a while but stopped.
Mhm.
That's the impression I got. So it can be stopped.
Well, and the one guy, though, the guy in prison says, that the way to stop it is you have to kill someone if you're
Right.
infected, so
And
maybe
he killed
maybe
somebody.
he did, and maybe the guy in Brazil killed somebody too.
Well, but then
But
the main character can't do it, right? I mean, she has the opportunity and can't do it, which I thought was an interesting message or theme in there. That sometimes we're not as brave as we think we are, or we know something's wrong, we won't do it even if it helps the greater good or whatever.
Right. Well, and with
So-
her, it could have also been, I've already killed someone, and it was my mother by not
Yeah.
picking up the phone and calling 911. And
Yeah,
she didn't want
She
to.
clearly has guilt from that.
Yeah, she didn't want to add another layer because it's pretty brutal. Yeah, you've got to pick some random person and kill them. I don't know how many people could actually do that. You
Right.
know. So.
But because the movie ends the way it does, it did feel a little tropey because we've seen that type of ending where
Yeah.
the cycle continues, right?
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I'll go back to the Babadook. That I love that ending because I didn't see it coming, It had a really interesting message. It was just great. I mean, that's a great movie.
You should have told me that you were going to talk about that because I have not seen that.
Oh, yeah, but
Yeah, well,
you haven't given too much away, so it's still
maybe
good.
we'll have to do that'll be our 50th episode. We'll get Scott back to talk about the Babadook.
Yeah.
Because you've seen it, right?
Oh yeah.
It's one of my favorite horror movies, I think. But.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's not on my list of favorites, but it's pretty good. Well worth seeing.
Yeah, we were talking about we should do a show. What's the scariest movie of all time?
And that stuff, because I brought up that's a very subjective question.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's like, is there such a thing?
Yeah, all we can say right now is our list would not include The Shining.
No, it would not be The Shining.
So, Scott, anything else to talk about with Smile?
Again, Sosie Bacon. I mean, she was great.
Good job.
And I think the performances all around. I didn't sense a lot of chemistry between her and the ex-boyfriend all that much, and we didn't really even talk about the fiance. You know how that was kind of an interesting character because he bails, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
He's like, "You're weird. I'm out of here." You know, which was not kind of a typical thing you'd see in a movie like this. Usually there'd be some kind of support.
But I think it was real because he did try to get that therapist in the house, remember? And it was beyond his ability to handle somebody with that level of mental health and trauma, right? And so he's like, "No, I'm out."
Yeah, and it also seems that the entity, when it possesses you, it starts to make you say things that we normally have our filters, you know, but it takes away our filters. So maybe she had been feeling this about her fiance a long time, is that, you know, you're not a death to us part kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're here and you're with me because the times are good, but as soon as the time gets bad, you're out of here. You know, maybe she just felt this all along.
And the exact opposite with the ex-boyfriend, who ends up kind of being her protector for a while there.
Right,
and
right.
she
Goes to him.
She even apologizes to him for her lack of commitment to him at one point too.
He was a solid guy. Perhaps.
Yeah. So interesting. Scott, anything else to say about it?
No, I think I covered it. I mean, like I said, the atmosphere was good. It definitely was thick on there, and they did a good job. I mean, one thing I really like about a good horror movie too, and this one has this, is like, you know, strong compositions. You've got things going on in the background. You know, she thinks she sees the girl that killed herself throughout the movie, right, which was handled well. But again, it's sort of a mixed bag for me, and there was good in there, and then some things that kind of annoyed me. You know?
Right.
You know, like I said, I just get so tired of the jump scares with the loud audio stinger. We're again unmotivated by what you're seeing, other than the script says this has to happen, so we're going to do it in the clunkiest way possible. You know, instead of trying to be creative or make it feel like it's really part of the scene. That's irritating.
Well, I am going to bring up, Scott. Have you ever seen Hell Baby?
No, what is that?
So Hell Baby is like this. It's a horror comedy.
Where did that come from?
Well, I'll tell you in a second. So
yeah.
it's like a horror comedy. Rob Corddry is in it, and he is constantly getting jump scared throughout like the first half hour of the movie. And finally, he's just like, I'm sick and tired of getting startled all the time. Right? It's a really awesome thing. Just addressing that directly. Gene, any final comments on Smile?
Yeah, Smile. It's if you have Amazon Prime, you can just pull it up for free and watch it. Yeah, it doesn't have a long run time. I mean, is it good?
Oh, it does. It's like 2 hours.
Yeah,
is it really?
Yeah, 116.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I take that back. It's not in Roger's sweet spot.
No.
With you, like 83
It'd
minutes.
have been a little
is it,
tighter.
maybe,
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, maybe that's part of the reason why we're not. I think we're in agreement here. Is it's okay. Don't get a solid endorsement here. Maybe it's better if they edited some stuff out. I mean, it's a worthwhile watch, sure, but is it a great horror movie? No.
Yeah, I think if you're not super into horror, you're gonna probably like this one. If you've seen a lot of them, like the three of us have, you're gonna see all the holes and all the tropes and all that stuff.
Right.
But I watched it twice. I certainly don't have an issue watching it again sometime down the road either. So,
or the eventual sequel, right? Because it made a ton of money. So
a ton of money.
But I'm
$200
hoping,
million.
right? But shouldn't the sequel be like Frown or something, Grimace or something? You know,
Yeah,
Scowl.
Take it the other way.
You bring up an interesting point. Like this seems to be the big trend right now. These really like simplistic titles, because there was lots of movies called Smile. In fact, I think Melanie Griffith, her first movie was called Smile back in like the 70s.
Nice.
Yeah,
So,
nobody was dying in that.
No,
one.
nobody was dying, but it seems like pretty common right now.
There.
I like a creative title, and this one obviously applies to the story, and that's fine. But it's just real basic word, not a lot of creativity in the name.
But they did that super awesome marketing campaign, right, where they had people going to the baseball games with their creepy smiles and
they were the actual
like
actors.
And
were they?
They would.
That was a good idea.
They would sit totally still with a smile.
See, that's what I did wrong. I didn't send my actors to baseball games and have the cameras.
Yeah, you could have. Yeah,
exactly. So, Gene, I don't know what we're doing next week. My understanding is we're talking about Human Centipede.
Oh man.
Yeah. So we can just do a few revolting ones.
I'm glad I won't be here for that one.
Well, but actually, Scott, did you see Human Centipede?
I have not seen him. I
know
of it.
So there's an open invitation. We'll be doing Human Centipede next week,
we'll do
Scott,
Human
if you want to watch
Centipede.
that and join us.
I'm
But
probably not going to watch that one.
oh, darn. Well, you'll at least listen to the podcast
Yes, I will.
and see, because it'll be spoiler-filled. Scott, love having you on the show.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime you want to come back on, just let us know. We'll definitely have him on for the 50th episode,
Okay.
right?
The 50th.
That's kind of a big
We
deal.
need to choose something, a consensus, the scariest movie of all time.
Maybe Scott can, because he texted us out of the blue. Hey, smile.
Well, I got jealous because I was hearing all these other guests on your show, and I'm like, I've only been on your show twice. Lots of competition out there.
But yeah, unless Gene backs out, we'll do Human Centipede next week.
I've seen the movie already.
Oh, well, beautiful. Even better then. So we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.